Well, hey everyone, happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights Live Show. I am Katie, joined by Chris and John. Hey guys.
Hello.
In
We've been
stereo.
we've been talking a lot the past few weeks, months about generative AI. And we wanted to sort of step back from that just this week, because it's not the only thing going on in digital marketing. If anything, it's overshadowing everything else. And so we wanted to acknowledge that there's more to digital marketing and what's going on in the industry than just generative AI. So this week, we're talking about fixing up email deliverability. We'll talk through how to set up your SPF, DKIM, and DMARC for your Hubspot instance. Got it. How to test your implementation with email tools and how to monitor your email deliverability with Gmail Postmaster tools. So this came about as a question that Chris was working on with a community member, and it sort of struck us that, oh, right, this sort of the digital marketing, different channels come second nature to us, but we also want to remind everybody that there's other things going on in digital marketing. And so, Chris, do you want to give a little more background to what's going on with this email deliverability question and where we want to start today?
Absolutely. So, for those who are HubSpot users, you got a notice in mid-November saying, hey, starting in February 2024, aka next month, Google and Yahoo are tightening restrictions on what you need to have in place to get your email delivered. Yahoo's got a big announcement over on their website. Google's got their announcement, but it basically boils down to three things. One-click unsubscribes, authentication with protocols, and then establishing a DMARC policy. So let's, before we jump in, let's do a quick recap. Spam has been a problem for a really long time with email. It's one of the oldest challenges out there. And these protocols exist to essentially tell email companies like Gmail and Yahoo, hey, we are who we say we are, right? When you get an email from us, it really is from us. It's not from some spam or pretending to be us. And to do the implementation well, you're going to need a few different ingredients. You're going to need, obviously, your HubSpot instance. You will probably need to talk to someone in IT if you have an IT team. If you don't, that's fine. You will need access to your DNS settings. So DNS, domain name system, is when you buy a domain name, you will typically get a control panel with your vendor, or you can use a third-party service like Cloudflare that allows you to make changes that tell the servers around the internet how to find you, how to find your company's website, your email, and so on and so forth. You'll need a text editor also as well, and you will probably want some coffee or with a caffeinated beverage of your choice.
I mean, seriously, you're rattling off these things, and I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I have a Chris Penn on my team to handle this stuff because I'm already lost.
Yep. So SPF stands for Sender Policy Framework. It is a text string that is in your DNS that says, hey, here's places we are sending email from, right? So I'm going to go over. So at Trust Insights, we use a company called Cloudflare. There's a free plan. We're on the free plan that you sign up for it, and then you tell wherever it is you bought your domain name, hey, I'm using Cloudflare now. They have a sign up steps to migrate over to their system. I like this because I just like having everything in one place, but it doesn't matter. Any place that you've bought a domain name, you have the ability to make these changes. I just find Cloudflare's implementation easier. What these records are, when you hear SPF and DKIM and DMARC, they're just text strings that get attached to your domain name that say, hey, here's who we are. So I'm going to pull up, let's just open up the edit box here for, actually, let's go with our SPF record first. You can see it's just a piece of text. And this piece of text says, here's where we are sending email from. So let's start with your HubSpot instance itself. In HubSpot, they actually provide some very good documentation on how you use DMARC policy, how you use an SPF record, and how you set up DKIM. Within your HubSpot instance, if you just go to the settings in your Hub, you click your icon, go to settings, go down to website, domains, and URLs. In here, you can start by connecting your domain. So I'm going to go ahead and click on connect domain. And we want to do an email sending domain. So this is not for your landing pages and stuff. This is for email sending. Now, I will also caveat, we are only on HubSpot sales. We do not use HubSpot marketing. I believe HubSpot marketing, there's more options, but either way, you want email sending. It will ask you, give us an example email address of an email address that you send email from. Right, so I'll put in our client services email address. And it says your email comes from this, right? That is correct. So it says, it essentially goes through and does a connection, and it should show up here as a connected sending domains. This takes care of the domain key identification protocol, DKIM, right? That's pretty straightforward for getting that connected. The next thing we have to do is we have to adjust the SPF record. HubSpot will give you a hint about how to do that. If you click on advanced options, the bottom is SPF record. Just hit copy on that, and now pull up your text editor.
I noticed on that, Chris, it actually said setting up an SPF record is optional. It sounds like, based on what I'm hearing you say, is it's really not optional to have really good email deliverability and hygiene.
Correct. And with SPF in particular, like, so DMARC is the newest protocol. It's 9 years old. SPF, I want to say it's like 15 years old. I mean, these things have been around for a while. The reason why marketers don't know about them is because it's largely the provenance of IT, right? Not to cast aspersions on our marketing brethren, but most marketers should not be monkeying around in their DNS because you can do very bad things like remove your site from the internet.
It's funny you say that. I'll tell a quick anecdote while you're getting set up. When I worked at, when I was the product manager at a company, our developers gave us instructions to edit our DNS files on our computers in order to switch the different environments that they were developing on so that we could see things on staging and on production, one versus the other. And they were basically just loosely giving out these instructions saying like, oh, you just do this and you change your local host file and you do this, that, and the other. And it was so dangerous looking back because given into the hands of people who had no idea what they were doing. And it did cause a lot of chaos. They spent more time fixing people's DNS files than they did actually developing. So just as a, Chris is making a good point, like just don't monkey around with your files if you don't know what you're doing.
Right. Or as the kids say, F around and find out. That's a generally poor policy. Okay. So SPF records, the easiest way to build them is with one of the many free wizards that are available on the internet. I happen to like MX Toolbox, but you can Google SPF wizard and find the tool of your choice, depending on what is easier for you.
I'm going to veto that. Chris recommends MX Toolbox. Use MX Toolbox. Google will go, there are many Russian sites that would love to mess with your record. So go with what Chris has proven.
So SPF wizard will ask things like, do you send email from your web server? Right. If no or yes, you specify this. Do you send email from the same server in your MX records? So this question means whatever it is system that you use to send email in your MX records, do you send email from that same service? In this case, for us, we do. We use Google Suite for businesses. So that is the domain that we send email from. Enter any other server hosting or domain that delivers email from your domain. So if you use Marketo or Pardot or whatever, HubSpot, etc., you would put that in there. For now, we don't want to fill that in because we copied this directly from HubSpot. So we're gonna leave that here. And it says enter your domain's IP address range and your IPv6 address range. So wherever your domain is sending email from, if it's a dedicated server other than Google Suite or Microsoft Outlook, Office 365, whatever those things. If it's something that if there's a physical box that you administer, that the information would go here, and then you would have third-party systems like Google, etc. And then for the strictness, start with neutral. What it has done is that unfortunately, it's already pulled our existing record. So this is not what the average person is going to see. let me show you how you would format this. So initially, you had the VSPF1, and then there's our HubSpot record, right? You're also, if you go to your email service providers documentation for Google Suite, for example, you have Google's, which is this one here for G Suite, and you basically start gluing together your SPF statement. Any other services that you send from. So, for example, with us, we do send email from Amazon, right? We send email from Amazon's simple email service. We use the Mautic marketing automation system, and Amazon is our back end. So this is another really important point. You probably, if you have an IT department, if you have an IT team, you absolutely positively should be talking to them about like, hey, what systems do we use? And or talk to them about, hey, what about, I don't know, can you help with this? Because there are some teams in corporate IT like, yeah, we're not, you're not going to touch this.
So if I understand at a high level what this SPF string, this text is meant to say, it's basically saying, verify that it's Trust Insights when you get the @trustinsights.ai email, and it comes from one of these various domains from this range of IP addresses.
That's correct.
Okay.
So if an email comes from this HubSpot domain, this Google domain, this Amazon domain, or these IP addresses are from our website. We host on WP Engine. So we have the domain ranges. SPF is saying, yes, you're legit. I will let this email through because when the email comes in, it matches these records. That's what SPF does. It is important to have any place that is sending email on your behalf, right? So I saw last week, I was looking at the website for an upcoming conference, and they're like, oh, you need to whitelist our domain because for some reason our emails are not getting through to people. I look at them like, oh, but you don't have your mail service in your SPF record. So everything you send is being interpreted as spam. Like you're telling everyone you are the biggest spammer for your domain.
Well, and it's to sort of go back to the instruction from HubSpot, and it's saying that this setting up your SPF record is optional. My sense is that this is probably the root of a lot of companies' deliverability issues, and this is the step that's often either skipped or not known that they need to do because of instructions like this is optional.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, another way too, I've seen this botch now is people are at this point here and they're only concerned about their own department. So you set this up and you don't realize that, oh, customer service, those tickets actually come from Zendesk. And so if you set this up and you haven't talked to other departments about what services they're mailing email from, you could inadvertently send all the customer service requests into spam and totally kill that. And so one workaround for that is that's why you'll see a lot of companies have like customer service at customerservice.acmecorp.com or whatever, have different domains so that if other departments are messing with this, they're not killing their stuff.
Yep, exactly. And that raises a good point. If you have a mail subdomain, it will probably have its own SPF records, or it should, because one of the things that's a best practice for larger corporations is your marketing emails should come from a separate subdomain than your customer service emails, because if marketing misbehaves and gets crap listed, at least your customer service and transactional emails will still get through. Okay, so we've got I'm going to go ahead and copy in our record here. So this is our current record. I'm just going to expand on this a bit. We're actually going to make a change to our record. You'll notice it says include HubSpot email.net. HubSpot gave us this very specific include, and we're going to replace that in ours. And the reason for that is you don't want other people with HubSpot instances pretending to be you. So we're going to swap this one in. So we're going to take this whole string. Now in your domain name system, if this record were not here, I would say we're going to add a new record. The type of record is a text record, right? And then from there, you're going to choose your domain name as your as the name of it. So trustinsights.ai, and then the content is that SPF record. I'm going to hit cancel here because we already have this, and you don't want to double up records. But I am going to replace our current content with that change to the HubSpot one. I have the time to live set to 2 minutes, which means that every 2 minutes, it's going to go through the worldwide DNS servers will take a look at this and say, hey, has that changed? So if you had this set to, say, 5 hours, for example, if you make a change to this record, it will take 5 hours for that to propagate around the internet. But set to 2 minutes, it will do its thing. If you're using a service like Cloudflare, there's a good chance you can just use auto. I just chose 2 minutes because I want things to be updated sooner rather than later.
Yeah, right. Remember that's not how fast do you feel it should propagate. It's when it hits the fan, how fast do you need to be able to clean up?
Exactly.
Right. Because if you've screwed up and set that to a day and you screw something up, now you have to wait a day for it to fix. But by keeping it down at 2 minutes, hopefully you're going to get a life raft faster.
Yep.
So Chris, we have a question regarding what you've been talking about. So when I am setting up my domain for emailing in HubSpot, it is asking me to update my DNS records. Is that going to mess up me getting my email through Gmail?
So that's a good question. Receiving email is different than sending email. So for sending email, the SPF record update, which is what we're doing now, is the primary mechanism that you're going to work on. You will also notice should notice in your DNS, there are things called MX records. This is the mail exchange records. These are to receive email. So again, we use Google Suite. So you can see that we have 5 different MX records here that say, hey, when email comes into the trustinsights.ai domain, where should that email be routed to? And we have, essentially Google's 5 different servers. They tell you to when you're setting up Google Workspace. So when you update your SPF record, as long as you don't touch your MX records, there will be no change from how you get email today. Okay.
All right.
So that's SPF, and if you do it right, then it's literally just one line of text that goes in your record. So we've done DKIM from inside HubSpot itself. We've done SPF. Now we need to go and do our DMARC record. The DMARC record is a third protocol. So DMARC is, again, it's another authentication mechanism that says, hey, when email comes in, verify it's from us. Again, do Google search for the DMARC wizard of your choice. I like to use the DMARCian. DMARCian is a company that provides DMARC services. I don't use their services. I just use their wizard because it's a pretty easy wizard. So the wizard is pretty straightforward. What email do you want to create a record for? Let's do trustinsights.ai. Before you do a DMARC record, you must have SPF and DKIM done. It is reliant on those 2 protocols, so you cannot do this first. All right, what kind of DMARC policy record do you want? So one of the things that DMARC does is it specifies where questionable email should be sent, right? So there's 3 settings. There's like permissive, quarantine, and reject. In general, people should start with collect data. However, one of the things that was discussed in both the Yahoo and the Google statements was they may be looking for less permissive DMARC implementations. They want to see DMARC implementation, period. So you're going to start with collect data. Eventually, you'll probably move to quarantine. We actually ran into issues with this with QuickBooks. So at one point, Katie was sending out an invoice from QuickBooks, and it didn't match our DMARC records, and so those invoices just went into a black hole. We fixed that by adding QuickBooks to the record senders.
But so you definitely don't want that to happen. You want your invoices to go out on time to the right people.
Exactly. Which, again, is one of those things where having your administrative emails separate from your marketing emails, it could be a good thing. Okay, where do you want your aggregate reports sent? So you need a working email address to put in here that will receive emails from ISPs that will say, like, hey, this is what we see. again, this has to be a working email address. And I strongly recommend if you have the time to do so, set up a separate inbox, because the amount of email you get is gargantuan. So we use the Trust Insights. We have a newsletter mailbox for this. And just to give you a sense real quick here, let me close my sidebar here. Oops, that's the wrong button. There we go. You get hundreds of notifications per day in this inbox. And what's in these emails is essentially log files. So these log files are coming in from the different services like Google and Yahoo and everybody else saying, hey, we got this email. Here's, it says, your domain has a DMARC record set up. Here's the return address. And so you should probably read this and make sure everything is good to go. I do recommend once in a blue moon checking that, make sure it is in fact, no one's spamming on your behalf, but at the same time, you probably do not want this in your main inbox, or you'll never see the rest of your inbox again.
I have a question. Excuse me. I remember when I worked at that same company that allowed us to edit our own DNS records, which was in our local host files. Once a week from IT, we would get a request to log into a portal that basically had we had to manually whitelist and blacklist emails that were coming in through our system. And so basically, because the name of my company at the time had 2 X's in the name, it often got marked as spam. But then that meant also emails coming into our system were getting flagged and quarantined. So we would log into this quarantine system. Excuse me. Is that something that, do you think companies still do that? Is that very old school? Like, has it evolved? Has email deliverability evolved to where you shouldn't be going through a system weekly to unquarantine things?
Oh no, the companies still do that. Even
goodness.
Google Workspace still does that. In fact, Google Workspace, I as a system administrator get messages saying, hey, this email has been quarantined. I even get notifications about outgoing emails saying, hey, this looks suspicious. John has sent a couple of suspicious looking emails, at least according to Google. And I always have to go into the system and say, release this, it's fine. John's just asking you to hire Trust Insights.
Oh, I always mark John as super suspicious.
This is super fun.
Okay, so let's put in, I'll go ahead and put in newsletter at trustinsights.ai as our aggregate report mailbox. Do you want to receive individual failure reports? The answer here is no, unless you are running into deliverability problems where you want to see individual reports. You will still get aggregate reports, and they're big, but the individual reports will give you a report on every single email address that bounces. If you want to make sure that someone in your company never gets email again, set this to yes.
Can I volunteer?
I
guess the answer is no.
I mean, you're the boss, so.
Yeah. It's awkward.
So do you want relaxed or strict? Again, start off with relaxed. You can upgrade to strict later. What this means is it looks for pass and fails on DKIM and SPF. And if it fails either one, then emails just don't get through. Do you want a different policy for subdomains? Again, if you are a bigger company, you have mail.trustinsights.ai or accounting.trustinsights.ai or marketing.trustinsights.ai. You would use separate domains and have different policies for each of the domains to keep them, subdomains to keep them separate. And what percentage of email do you want supply to apply to? If you're starting for report only, set it to 100%. If you are starting it for quarantine or reject, start at like 10% just to make sure that nothing has gone wrong. From a governance perspective, if you're going to make changes like that, probably tell people first, like, hey, this Sunday, we're changing things. So if you stop getting email, please let IT know.
It seems, it's interesting because like that kind of advice feels so like, oh, duh, of course we're going to do this. 10 times out of 10, that communication never happens. And people come in Monday freaking out that like their inbox hasn't updated for 6 hours.
Yeah, and they're doing it on Cyber Monday too.
Always. It's never convenient.
Exactly. So here's our DMARC record. We're going to go back into Cloudflare. And again, as we did before, you can see here, we have a single text record. The record name is underscore DMARC. Here's our content, which is the DMARC string that comes out, right? So it has, here's the return address. Ours is slightly different than what came out of the wizard because Cloudflare also allows you to do DMARC management with them. So I'll show you that in just a second. But this is DMARC. The strictness right now is set to monitor only, and you can see our return address there for where the reports go. So I'm gonna hit cancel because nothing's different there. So that would be the third protocol to set up. Now, if you're using any other DNS provider, GoDaddy or whoever, at this point you're done. You've got your record set. If you're using Cloudflare, you go into the email and there's a DMARC management panel. This tool is in beta. You can give it a test, and it will tell you, hey, here's as email starts to come in. I just turned this on like 10 minutes ago, so there's nothing here. But as email starts to come in, it will read some of those reports for you, which is super nice, and then summarize it and tell you like, hey, this is what I see happen.
That is really handy. So prior to that, how would you get that information?
You would suffer.
Well, I guess I'm asking the question because not everyone's using Cloudflare, and maybe not everyone has the option to turn on features. They don't have permissions.
I will show you. You get log files every day. And in those log files, you have to go through and parse and read each of the log files and judge the conditions of the log files. They're all in XML format, so they're open formats, but it's not pretty.
Yeah, that does not look like fun.
No, it's not fun. That's why there actually are companies that will just do this for you. They were paid services in the past. Now, obviously, Cloudflare is offering it as part of their free package, which is really, really nice. Okay, so you've now gone through and you've done SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, and you've set them up for your HubSpot instance while not blowing up all of your other existing email infrastructure, which, again, I can't say that enough. You've got to work together with other teams if you have them. The last thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you have access, and you may have to work with IT if you work at a large organization, to Google's Postmaster tools. Postmaster tools, and we've done a live stream in the past on this, but it's probably worth revisiting, is a free service from Google. Go to postmaster.google.com. You will have to authenticate your domain. You'll have to verify that you are an authorized administrator of your domain. It's a relatively simple process. And then you get access to a lovely control panel that tells you these 7 things. For authentication, this is one thing where Google is a little weird. And there are multiple warnings about this from HubSpot, from Mailgun, from all these companies. For whatever reason, Google always shows SPF as a soft fail, and we don't know why, but it is. So if your SPF in Postmaster Tool shows a 0, don't panic. As long as the record is there, and again, you can use MX Toolbox to validate the record is okay. That you don't need to worry about Google's thing. If you see, the thing to pay attention to for Google is the DMARC success rate. If DMARC success is below 100%, you know there's a problem. So this will tell you that Google is seeing things A-okay. Yahoo doesn't have this. I don't know why. They provide no feedback. That's one key part. Another key part of this is, let's go to our spam rate. Google has said, I believe Yahoo said this as well, they're holding people now to a 0.3% spam rate, which means that on your list, fewer they didn't say what aggregate number, but I'm presuming it's probably either weekly or monthly. You must be at a 0.3%, report as spam, mark as spam rate or lower. So you'll see, for example, here, we brushed with that on December 11th with 0.2, but for the last 60 days, we have consistently stayed below that number. So our list is healthy. Our email services are healthy. We are not annoying people. I
probably asked this question on the past episode when we covered Google Postmaster Tools. And if you want past episodes, you can go to trustinsights.ai/YouTube and search for the episode there under our So What playlist. Are there other tools besides Google Postmaster Tools that you can use to do this kind of analysis?
MX Toolbox will let you know for like old school blacklists if you're a domain or your servers are on anyone's blacklist. So it will say like, hey, we found you on this list. We are not on any blacklists right now, which is nice. But it will say like, hey, you were flagged by one or more of these places.
Because you like to talk about regulations, I know the FTC has the CAN-SPAM Act, which they launched in 2003. Where does this apply? And is it still something that's relevant to email marketers in present day, 21 years later?
CAN-SPAM was appropriately named because it was Congress's attempt at legislation that was so miserably backwards that it basically told people exactly how they can spam you. And so it is, as legislation goes, completely ineffective. The legislation that is the most strict in the world right now is Canada's. So the Canadian Anti-Spam Law, or CASL, is the most stringent. And essentially, it is very much what we're implementing now. So one click unsubscribe, easy unsubscribe, fast response. You cannot send unsolicited commercial email, right? So you can't just go cold emailing people. And there are decent fines for doing that. The EU has some similar spam laws, but Canada's are the toughest right now.
Gotcha. No, that's helpful because I remember when I was first starting, and this was back around 2005, so the law was only 2 years old. There was a lot of talk about how we don't violate the CAN-SPAM because I believe it was something ridiculous, like a fine of $16,000 per spammy email, that they catch you on. And it was just ridiculous money, and everybody was terrified.
Yeah. The CAN-SPAM law is largely ineffective. David asked a question in chat about setting up BIMI. So BIMI is a protocol that's built on top of DMARC. What it does is it is essentially branding for your emails, and that requires you to set up some DNS records, but then you have to go and pay a bunch of money on a regular basis. John, you looked at this most recently. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, I've done this a couple of times. So it is on certain mail clients. It's cool because you'll see this where you see an icon for all the messages, but you'll actually see a company logo for like Bank of America or some airlines or some of these huge brands. And of course that makes sense because these brands are getting spam so many times. Like you get all these things in your inbox about how, your Bank of America account needs you to log in. And I'm like, I don't even have a Bank of America account. How can this be happening? And so BIMI is basically kind of the cream of the crop, but unfortunately it is priced accordingly. I think it's something like last time I looked about a year and a half ago or so around there, it was like $5,000 a year for that certification. And then there's some other fees too that go into it. I think like for each brand you want to have in there, there's more cash on top of that. So that's pretty much, if you have a 20-person marketing department, you're not going to notice it. But for mid-sized to smaller businesses, it's probably way out of your budget. There's better things you can do with the money.
Exactly. So the big thing to remember here for Postmaster Tools is you do want to keep an eye on your authentication rates and make sure that they're not like going downwards. And again, remember that SPF does not work for whatever reason within Google. And then you want to look at your mark as spam rate. How many people are marking you as spam? And you want to keep that to 0.3% or lower. So 0.001% or lower, because that's what the new threshold is. So if you do all these steps, so SPF, DKIM, DMARC, and then monitor in Postmaster Tools, and you have your email service provider provides the one-click unsubscribe mechanism, you will be okay. I will warn you right now, B2B marketers are going to experience a lot of hardship with these changes, because one-click unsubscribe is something that it can be very problematic. The reason for it is a lot of corporate firewalls will get an email and click on every single link automatically to detect malware. If you have a true one-click unsubscribe mechanism, that the corporate firewall will just unsubscribe to your entire list for that company. And there's really no good workaround for that. The better implementations of that are, you go to one click takes you to an unsubscribe page and someone just confirms that they want to unsubscribe, and that is better. That remains to be seen whether or not that's the implementation Google's looking for. Google also says looking for the list unsubscribe header, which is programmatically sent behind the scenes. And if in Gmail if a company has set that up properly, there'll be an unsubscribe from this list button inside the Gmail interface that will send the appropriate data to the sender. HubSpot says they're going to be implementing it soon. You will have to check with your vendor of choice as to how that works. But most marketing automation software that it's reputable should support that.
So if I can sort of summarize where we're at a little bit, am I understanding correctly that to do your deliverability hygiene and set up correctly, it doesn't all happen through one single system? So if I set up my CRM, then I look in my settings. The settings aren't advanced enough to be able to confidently send emails through that system and know that they're going to get through to my customers.
Correct. If you have multiple vendors or tools that are sending email, you have to, as we did, kind of Frankenstein stuff together so that you account for all the sources of email in your organization in one single SPF and DKIM setup. If you don't do that, then yeah, it's going to get not pretty.
Well, and it sounds like even if you have a very simple tech stack, so let's say you're just using Google Suite and you're just using HubSpot, for example, those are two different domains that you could be sending emails from. And so you still want to go through this process, even for a very simplistic tech stack.
Yeah. I mean, we use HubSpot, we use Mautic through Amazon, and we use Google Workspace. And you saw in our SPF statement, we had to account for those systems plus our website. So our website itself, which is hosted on WP Engine, has its own IP range, and we had to make sure that the IP addresses of our web server are also there, because when you fill out a form on the Trust Insights website, we use a tool called Gravity Forms. It's part of WordPress. That is sending email from the physical web server itself. So it's not connected to HubSpot directly. So it's not sending the email through HubSpot. It's not sending an email through Mautic. It is sending it from WordPress itself. And so that needs to be in there too. If you skip that step, then what you may find is that people will fill out a contact form on your website and it goes to send a confirmation email to the customer and they never get it.
Don't forget our friends at QuickBooks.
And QuickBooks,
yep.
Yes.
Accounting systems, sales systems, where, again, this comes back to good IT governance. Where does email come from in your organization?
Yeah. Always got to start with your requirements and what systems are you using. All right. So let's say we set all of this up. How do we know it's working? How do we test this?
So testing it is a matter of, so there's a couple different ways. One straightforward way is to set up a consumer mailbox on most systems, a Hotmail address, a Gmail address, a Yahoo address, and check them, right? So subscribe into your lists and then see like, hey, did our test accounts get those emails? So for example, we all have personal Gmail addresses. I'm subscribed to all of our stuff on our things, and I make sure we get our emails every week when we send them. I often use my personal Gmail account to fill out forms on the Trust Insights website, just to make sure that the email gets through. There are companies, Litmus, Validity, Return Path, or the Return Path is part of Validity now, that have essentially paid versions of this. So what they do is they have tens of thousands of dummy accounts set up around the world, and when they basically monitor those for your sends, and those services are, as you would expect, reassuringly expensive, but they do work really well.
Well, and depending on the nature, I was going to say, depending on the nature of your business, that might be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've used some of those services in the past, and it's great. You can go to a screen and it will have a grid of 65 things. And it's like, okay, here's your email on like every single major phone, every single major tablet, every single major browser. And to be able to just see on 65 different platforms in one shot what's working. Yeah, if you're that size, those tools are a huge benefit, huge value.
Yep. And with Postmaster tools, it should be someone's job in your company or on your team to check this console and spam rate and authentication rate once a quarter, once a month. Depends on how important email marketing is to your company, right? So if email marketing is a critical part of your business, then you should check this console accordingly. I check it once a month. I just go and look at it and go, that's weird. But thankfully for Trust Insights, because we don't do bad stuff with our data, we don't have a complaints problem.
Is there a way in this system to set up alerts that could, I know, ironic, email you or notify you somehow to say like you've gone over your threshold or something? So basically you wouldn't have to go into the tool. You could basically just say like, if my, spam goes above this number, basically set off the alarm bells and bring me into the system. Because I hear what you're saying about like, for us, we don't send a lot of email, outside of our normal client communications, that kind of thing. So checking it once a month is fine for us. But for companies that are doing big, heavy email marketing programs, enterprise-sized companies, even businesses that are just starting, they have to check it a little bit more frequently.
Not for this tool in particular, but again, when you pay a company like Validity, they handle all the monitoring and reporting for you. And I remember last time I worked with Return Path, which is a while ago now. It was something like $10,000 or $15,000 a month.
Oh, so nice and affordable.
If you're Amazon, that's like pocket change. So you will find that in the couch cushions.
No, that excuse me, that makes sense. We have another question, and I think this is a good place for us to start to wrap up. If you are a solopreneur or freelancer and don't have an IT team, which a lot of companies don't, or individuals don't, is there a company you would recommend who can help set these things up for us or keep us in compliance?
No.
I'm going to go ahead and say trustinsights.ai/contact. Chris literally, and I don't mean like Chris literally wrote a book on email marketing. It is, aside from generative AI, one of his favorite things about digital marketing. He spent a lot of time working in email marketing. He obviously knows the ins and outs of tech and things that go into it and hygiene. I personally don't know anyone better suited to do email deliverability, and that is completely biased because obviously it serves us. But I say that in Chris has been able to debunk pretty much any other vendor that we've ever looked at and say, well, they're not doing these 6 things. So I would say definitely give us a shout first, and if we're not the right fit, we can certainly connect you with someone else.
I forgot, I actually wrote 2 books on email.
He literally wrote the 2 books on email marketing.
Neither of which is available anymore.
Would you add anything to that, Chris?
No, I mean, again, it's one of those things that ideally, as long as you don't change your MarTech stack, once it's done, that's just a question of monitoring it, right, to make sure that things are working. But these are systems that you should not be messing with on a regular, frequent basis. So get it done, then really set it and forget it.
Mm-hmm. John, final thoughts?
Well, I do have more bad news. There is reputation scoring in there too. So like, even if you have all this technical stuff straight, you can still behave badly and get treated poorly because of that. So there is another level of stuff up there. But yeah, this is a great place to start. Like, you've got to have, if you want to have any chance of getting your email through, you've got to do all this stuff. So run through all this and get that going. And at least you're, making the best effort. And after that, don't be a jerk. I guess that's my parting shot.
Yeah. I mean, don't send crappy email that people don't want. That tends to help an awful lot. All right. So that's going to do it for this week on email deliverability. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.